I never thought I'd have trust issues with my own parents. Growing up, they weren't perfect. Whose parents are? But David and Marie Mitchell always drilled into me the importance of honesty, integrity, and above all, family. Family helps family, that was the mantra. Which is why, standing in their kitchen that Tuesday afternoon 6 months ago, clutching my phone with shaking hands as I listened to my mother's cheerful deceit through the open window, felt like the ground had completely vanished beneath my feet. Everything I thought I knew about them, about us, turned out to be a carefully constructed lie. Let me back up. My name is Olivia Hayes. I'm 32. Until this whole nightmare began, I consider myself moderately successful, definitely independent. Senior software developer at a major tech firm headquartered here in Denver. I had a comfortable downtown apartment with great views of the Rockies, a solid career path, and most importantly, a carefully nurtured savings account holding just shy of $300,000. That money wasn't just savings, it was my future. My escape hatch from the corporate ladder, the seed money for the tech consultancy firm I dreamed of launching within the next 2 years. I'd earned every penny myself, scholarships through college while working two jobs, followed by years climbing the demanding rungs of the tech world, project by grueling project. No handouts, no trust funds, just sheer hard work and disciplined saving. My parents, Richard and Eleanor Hayes, lived a different reality back in Lakewood, the suburb where I grew up. Dad was a beloved high school history teacher nearing retirement. Mom worked part-time arranging flowers at a local shop. They were good people, I always believed, just perpetually struggling. Their modest ranch-style house, bought decades ago when the neighborhood was still affordable, was crumbling around them. Every visit home involved a new litany of required repairs. The leaky roof that left water stains on the ceiling, the ancient furnace that wheezed ominously each winter, the foundation cracked spiderwebbing across the basement walls. Look at that plaster, Olivia, Mom would sigh, pointing at a crack above the doorway. We really should get it fixed, but, contractors these days. The Andersons next door just remodeled their kitchen. Dad would mention casually over dinner. Looks fantastic. Imagine having a space like that, Ellie. A home we could actually be proud of, entertain in. The unspoken request hung in the air. I helped where I could, always. Christmas and birthday gifts became practical necessities, covering the cost of a new water heater one year, paying for major car repairs the next, contributing to property taxes. But it was like trying to patch a sinking ship with duct tape. The house was deteriorating faster than my contributions could mend it. Then came the hailstorm last winter. Not just hail, golf ball-sized chunks of ice driven by hurricane-force winds that shredded roofs across Lakewood. Theirs took a direct hit. Half the roof was torn away, water damage extensive throughout the attic and bedrooms. The insurance payout, predictably, covered only a fraction of the necessary repairs for a house already in such disrepair. Their meager savings wouldn't even touch the deductible. I found them a few days later, sitting at their scarred kitchen table, surrounded by astronomical contractor quotes and impenetrable insurance forms. They looked utterly defeated. Dad, usually stoic, stared blankly out the window, his shoulders slumped. Mom was crying quietly into a tissue, the picture of despair. "We'll have to sell, Ellie," Dad said, his voice hollow, resigned. "Just sell it as is. Take whatever pennies we can get. Move into a small apartment somewhere." "But all the memories?" Mom whispered, tears tracking down her face. "Your height marks on the pantry doorframe, Olivia? The garden I've tended for 30 years? Just gone?" Seeing them like that, so broken, so hopeless, it shattered something in me. They deserved better. They deserved security, comfort, a place to enjoy their retirement years without constant worry. And I had the means. That $300,000 sat in my investment accounts, earmarked for my future, my dream. But watching them, the mantra echoed, family helps family. What if, I thought, the idea forming almost before I could censor it? What if I didn't just patch things up? What if I gave them the fresh start they deserved? I took a deep breath. "Mom! Dad?" They both looked up, surprised by the sudden firmness in my voice. What if, what if I helped you rebuild? Not just fix the roof, demolish this place, build something new. The house you've always talked about. Something safe, warm, something that will last. Something you can truly be proud of. They stared at me, speechless. Mom's tears stopped midstream. Dad's eyes widened in disbelief. Olivia, honey, Dad stammered, finding his voice first. We could never ask you for that. That's your life savings. You're not asking, I repeated, a wave of perhaps foolishly optimistic generosity washing over me. I'm offering. I have the funds. Enough to do it right. Consider it. An early inheritance gift. Used now when you need it most. Mom burst into tears again, but this time they were tears of overwhelming relief and joy. She practically leaped across the kitchen, hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. Oh, Olivia, our angel. We always knew we raised you right. Dad hugged me too, his eyes suspiciously bright. Looking back now, the speed with which their protest dissolved into enthusiastic acceptance should have been a red flag. The way they seamlessly shifted from "we could never ask" to discussing granite versus quartz countertops within the hour. But I was too caught up in the emotional tide, in the sheer joy of being able to fix things for them, to finally be the capable daughter providing security for her parents. The next few months were a whirlwind. We found Mike Peterson, a respected local contractor specializing in custom homes. Mom and Dad moved temporarily into my Aunt Clara's spare room. I liquidated nearly my entire investment portfolio, the money disappearing into a dedicated construction account. I took out a small bridge loan against my remaining assets to ensure cash flow wasn't an issue. I was the sole funder. Therefore, logically, I was the primary decision maker, reviewing contracts, approving payments. Or so I thought. Mom and Dad attended every single meeting with Mike Peterson and the architect, and every meeting seemed to end with budget increases. Olivia, honey, Mike says for just a few thousand more, we could have those gorgeous hardwood floors throughout. Darling, your father was thinking, since we're building anyway, a small finished basement with a home theater wouldn't add that much relatively, would it? Olivia, the standard appliance package is fine, but the Bosch induction cooktop, it's just so much better. Each time they'd look at me with those wide, hopeful eyes, each time caught up in their infectious enthusiasm for their dream home, I'd reluctantly agree. What was another few thousand when I was already spending hundreds? I told myself it was worth it, watching their genuine excitement as the house took shape. A beautiful two-story craftsman style, far grander than their old ranch with a wraparound porch, huge windows flooding the rooms with light, high-end finishes everywhere. This was for them. This was for family. The dwindling balance in my own accounts, the delayed dream of my consultancy, seemed like a small price to pay for their happiness. Finally, 2 weeks ago, the house was finished. Move-in day was chaotic, emotional. Mom and Dad were like children on Christmas morning, exclaiming over the marble countertops I hadn't chosen, the smart home system Dad insisted upon, the professional landscaping I hadn't budgeted for but somehow got approved. I'd never seen them so deliriously happy. We're having a housewarming party next Saturday, Mom announced excitedly as we unpacked kitchen boxes, the kitchen I paid for. Just family and close friends. You'll come early to help set up, won't you, Angel? Of course, Mom. I smiled, admiring the afternoon sun streaming through the expensive new Pella windows. Wouldn't miss it. Which brought me to today. Arriving early as promised, parking in the newly paved circular driveway, another $15,000 upgrade, walking towards the front door of the house built with my future, and hearing my mother's cheerful voice drift through the open kitchen window, talking on her phone, utterly oblivious to my presence just feet away. Of course we'll sell it once she pays off that little bridge loan she took out, Mom was saying, followed by her light, tinkling laugh. She's too naive to even check the deed, bless her heart. Thinks her name is on it. My hand froze halfway to the doorbell. I know, Mom continued, still laughing. Can you believe she just handed over her savings like that? All those years of telling her to be responsible with money finally paid off? Once we sell this place, market's hot, Brian says we can easily clear 7 figures. We can get that gorgeous condo in Scottsdale we looked at. Sarah Olivia will understand. She always does. She's such a good daughter. The world tilted. I leaned heavily against the porch railing, the blood roaring in my ears. The deed. Scottsdale. Sell it. My savings. My consultancy. Gone. Not gifted, but swindled. By my own parents. They hadn't just accepted my help. They had planned this, counted on my trust, my love, my ingrained sense of family helps family, to fleece me out of everything I had worked for. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it stole my breath. The foundation of my world didn't just crack. For a long moment after Mom's voice faded from the kitchen window, I just stood there on the porch, leaning against the railing, the world tilting on its axis. The cheerful sounds of her humming inside, the scent of baking cookies, it all felt grotesque, a soundtrack to a betrayal so profound it left me breathless. Sell it. Condo in Scottsdale. Too naive to check the deed. She always does. Good daughter. The words echoed, each one a hammer blow against the foundation of trust I thought, foolishly we still shared. My entire life savings, my dream, sacrificed for their dream, which apparently involved flipping the house I paid for and retiring to Arizona on the profits, leaving me with what? Empty accounts and a pat on the head? Nausea churned in my stomach. My first instinct was to burst through the door, confront her, demand answers, unleash the torrent of hurt and anger rising inside me. But then, the analytical part of my brain, the part honed by years of debugging code and tracing logical flaws, kicked in. An emotional confrontation now? It would achieve nothing but tears, denials, gaslighting. They'd twist the narrative, play the victims, accuse me of misunderstanding, of being ungrateful. Number they expected the hurt daughter, they wouldn't expect the calculating software developer. They taught me about responsibility. They forgot they also taught me about meticulous documentation. I took several deep, steadying breaths, forcing the shaking in my hands to subside. I smoothed down my dress, wiped the single tear that had escaped, and composed my features into a mask of pleasant neutrality. Then I walked to the front door and rang the bell as if I'd just arrived. "Olivia, honey, you're early." "Mom," Eleanor beamed as she opened the door, pulling me into a hug that felt suffocatingly false. She smelled cloyingly of vanilla and something expensive I couldn't quite place. A new perfume, perhaps? Paid for by me, no doubt. "Wouldn't miss it," I smiled back, stepping inside, forcing myself to return the hug briefly. "The house looks incredible from the outside." "Doesn't it?" she gushed, leading me towards the gleaming new kitchen. "Wait until you see the countertops. Your father is just finishing polishing the wine glasses." I spent the next 3 hours giving the performance of my life. I complimented the ludicrously expensive marble countertops Mom had to have. I admired the state-of-the-art home theater system in the newly finished basement Dad insisted was crucial for family movie nights. I praised the smart home system, the professional landscaping, the custom light fixtures, all the upgrades they had pushed for, all funded by my dwindling savings, all apparently destined for someone else's enjoyment after they flipped the property. I smiled. I nodded. I played the role of the proud, supportive daughter, while my mind raced, analyzing, planning, gathering data points. I observed them with new, chillingly objective eyes. Noticed the quick, knowing glances they exchanged when discussing future travel plans. Maybe Arizona next winter, Richard? Noticed how Dad subtly steered conversations away from long-term finances. Noticed how Mom emphasized their hard work in overseeing the construction whenever guests complimented the house. It was a carefully orchestrated performance, and I was meant to be the unwitting, generous benefactor. During a lull, while Mom was arranging canapes and Dad was demonstrating the automated blinds to an impressed neighbor, I excused myself, murmuring something about needing to check a work email. I retrieved my laptop from my bag. I never go anywhere without it, a developer's habit, and slipped out onto the wraparound porch, finding a quiet corner shielded from the main windows. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed, not from fear anymore, but from adrenaline. Public records. Denver County Property Database. Address search. 1247 Maple Street, Lakewood. Enter. My breath hitched as the record loaded. Owner of record, Richard Hayes and Eleanor Hayes. Date registered. 2 weeks ago, right after construction completed and closing papers were supposedly finalized. Deed type, joint tenancy with right of survivorship. My name? Nowhere. Not as a co-owner, not as having any lien, nothing. Just gone. As if the nearly $300,000 I poured into this property, my entire financial future, had simply vanished into their title. Cold, hard proof. I quickly took screenshots, saved the official PDF of the deed to my encrypted cloud drive. Evidence secured. I closed the laptop, took another shaky breath, and composed myself before heading back inside, the polite smile firmly back in place. Phase 1, confirmation, complete. Now for Phase 2, evidence gathering. I endured the rest of the party, making small talk, accepting compliments on my parents' beautiful new home. I listened to Mom tell the Hendersons how blessed they were to have such a successful, generous daughter taking care of them in their old age. I watched Dad accept congratulations on the smart investment. The nausea churned, but my resolve hardened. As guests began to leave, I found a moment alone near the kitchen. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick, casual email to Mike Peterson, the contractor. Subject, final docs for records. Hi, Mike. Hope you're well. The house looks fantastic. Mom and Dad are thrilled. The party is lovely. Quick question for my tax records. Could you possibly forward me the final consolidated file with all the signed change orders and final payment receipts from the build when you have a moment next week? Just need it for my accountant. Thanks so much, Olivia Hayes. Simple. Plausible. Nothing to raise alarm bells. He dealt primarily with me regarding payments and approvals throughout the build. The request wouldn't seem unusual. His reply came within the hour. Hi, Olivia. Glad they're happy. No problem at all. Things are hectic Monday, but I should be able to get that compiled file over to you by Tuesday or Wednesday. Tom. Correction, Mike. I mentally noted his name. Perfect. The days following the party were a masterclass in strained normalcy. I made excuses to limit visits, citing heavy workload. Mom called daily with cheerful, meaningless updates about settling in, subtly probing about my finances. Are you managing okay, dear? You spent so much on the house. I kept my answers vague, polite. Inside, I was building my case. Mike Peterson sent the files on Wednesday, as promised. A massive PDF containing every invoice, every payment confirmation, and crucially, every single change order authorization. I spent hours that night meticulously going through them. The initial orders, the ones for structural changes or basic materials I'd discussed and approved, my signature was clear, consistent. But then came the upgrades, the marble, the high-end appliances, the smart home system, the ridiculous circular driveway. Dozens of change orders totaling well over $150,000. And the signatures? Close, very close to mine, but undeniably different. Slightly shakier on some, a bit too perfect on others. Forged, likely traced or digitally copied from one of my earlier legitimate signatures by either my mother or father, confident I'd never scrutinize the details once swept up in their dream home narrative. I carefully documented each forged signature, cross-referencing the dates with my own calendar and email records, proving I hadn't been present or hadn't approved those specific expenditures electronically. Then I compiled my own financial records, bank statements, investment liquidation confirmations, wire transfers, tracing every single dollar from my accounts directly to Mike Peterson's construction company or relevant suppliers. The digital paper trail was irrefutable. I had funded approximately 95% of this entire project, including the unauthorized forged upgrades. Armed with the deed, the evidence of forgery, my meticulous financial tracking, and my clear recollection of Eleanor's overheard phone call, I scheduled a consultation with Ms. Anya Sharma, a partner at one of Denver's top litigation firms specializing in property law and financial fraud. I laid everything out on her polished conference table. The photos of the old, dilapidated house, the initial quotes, my bank statements, the final house photos, the county deed record, the email chain with Mike Peterson, the highlighted change orders with the forged signatures. Finally, I recounted the overheard phone conversation. Ms. Sharma listened intently, her expression growing progressively sterner. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Ms. Hayes, she said, her voice crisp, this is egregious. Let me be clear. Based on this documentation and your testimony, we have multiple strong grounds. Clear evidence of financial fraud via the forged signatures, unjust enrichment, as they benefited entirely from funds you provided under potentially false pretenses. Breach of fiduciary duty if any informal agreement existed regarding your contribution. And their stated intent to sell the property without compensating you demonstrates clear intent to defraud. She looked at me directly. The forgery alone carries potential criminal implications, though pursuing that can be complex within families. However, on the civil side, we have significant leverage. The question isn't if we can act, Ms. Hayes. It's what outcome you desire. I met her gaze, my own resolve solidifying. I don't necessarily want them in jail, I said slowly. Though the thought has crossed my mind. What I want is control. I want my investment secured. I want them to understand, unequivocally, that they cannot simply take what is mine. Ms. Sharma nodded slowly, a plan clearly forming behind her sharp eyes. I believe, she said, a hint of steel entering her voice. We can arrange that. Leaving her office that afternoon, clutching copies of the initial demand letter and lien documents she had drafted, I felt a strange sense of calm determination. The shock and hurt were still there, deep down, but they were overlaid now with the cool, clear logic of a well-defined strategy. They thought they had played me, the naive, dutiful daughter. They forgot I was also a developer who understood systems, vulnerabilities, and the critical importance of a secure backend. Phase 2 was complete. It was time to execute the patch. Leaving Ms. Sharma's office, I felt a strange mix of dread and empowerment. The path ahead was clear, legally sound, but emotionally fraught. Confronting my parents, laying bare their deceit and potential crimes, it wasn't something I relished. But the alternative, allowing them to profit from betraying my trust and sacrificing my future, was unthinkable. They had taught me about responsibility. Now it was time to teach them about accountability. For the next week, I maintained the facade. I answered Mom's cheerful calls with polite neutrality, deflected questions about my work, even agreed vaguely to the upcoming Saturday dinner with the Clarks she was so keen on hosting in her new house. Inside, however, I was meticulously preparing. Ms. Sharma worked quickly, preparing the necessary documents to file a LIS pendens, a formal notice of a pending lawsuit affecting the property title, along with a detailed mechanics lien citing my substantial, documented financial contribution to the construction and the evidence of forged payment authorizations. This will effectively cloud the title, Mrs. Sharma explained during a brief follow-up call. They won't be able to sell the property or take out any significant loans against it without resolving your claim first. They won't receive immediate notification unless they happen to check the county records, which most people don't do routinely. Phase 1 of securing my investment was quietly underway. During a visit the following weekend, ostensibly to drop off a casserole dish Mom claimed I'd left behind, I casually brought up the subject of finances again. Dad, I asked while admiring the overpriced, signature-forged, smart refrigerator, did you manage to look into those property taxes yet? I was checking the county assessor's site online, just curious about neighborhood values, and it looks like the new assessment tripled the tax burden. Quite a jump. Just wanted to make sure you guys were prepared for that bill. I saw them exchange a quick, almost imperceptible glance. Ah, yes, taxes, Dad mumbled, suddenly finding a smudge on the stainless steel door intensely interesting. We're looking into it, Olivia. Might need to adjust the budget slightly. Maybe consider appealing the assessment, I suggested innocently. Though you'd need clear title and proof of value. I let the sentence hang. Mom quickly changed the subject, asking about my dating life for the 5th time that week. They hadn't checked the records yet, clearly. But the seed of financial anxiety was planted. The trap was sprung 2 weeks later. My phone rang. Mom, her voice tight with barely suppressed panic. Olivia, there's a problem with the house title. We were talking to Brian Henderson, the mortgage broker. just exploring options for a small home equity line, maybe for that Arizona condo down payment. And he said there's a lien on the property filed by you. What is the meaning of this? Bingo. A lien, Mom. I feigned surprise. Really? Based on what? It mentions construction payments, forged documents. Olivia, this is slander. How could you do this behind our backs? Perhaps, I said calmly, we should discuss this in person. With our respective legal counsel present, my lawyer, Ms. Anya Sharma, is available tomorrow afternoon. Shall we say 2 p.m.? At your house? I paused. Or should I say, my house? There was choked silence on the other end, then a click. The atmosphere when Ms. Sharma and I arrived at the house the next day was thick enough to cut with a knife. Mom and Dad sat rigidly at their expensive dining room table, the one I paid for, flanked by a flustered-looking lawyer I didn't recognize. Clearly not a high-powered litigator, likely someone they found quickly and cheaply. Margaret wasn't present, perhaps wisely choosing to stay away. Ms. Sharma, calm and professional, wasted no time. She laid out our case with meticulous precision, placing documented evidence on the polished wood surface between us. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, she began, her voice even but firm. We have compiled evidence demonstrating that our client, Olivia Hayes, provided approximately $312,000, representing her entire life savings, for the construction of this property. She slid forward copies of my bank statements and wire transfers. Furthermore, she continued, placing the file from the contractor next, we have documented proof, including forensic signature analysis, that signatures purporting to be Ms. Hayes's were forged on multiple construction change orders, authorizing approximately $157,800 in unapproved upgrades. She indicated the specific forged documents. This constitutes financial fraud. She then produced the county deed record. Despite providing nearly all the capital, Ms. Hayes's name was deliberately excluded from the property title registered solely to Richard and Eleanor Hayes. Finally, she referenced my sworn affidavit regarding the overheard phone call. Compounded by Mrs. Hayes's stated intention, overheard by our client, to sell this property for personal gain without compensating Ms. Hayes, these actions demonstrate a clear pattern of deceit, breach of trust, and intent to defraud. My parents stared at the documents, their faces pale. Their lawyer shuffled his papers nervously. Given these facts, Mrs. Sharma continued coolly, Ms. Hayes has several legal avenues. We are fully prepared to proceed with civil litigation to recover the full $312,000 plus damages, and to refer the evidence of forgery and potential trust fund mismanagement, referencing the older files I still held but hadn't needed to deploy yet, to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Investigation. Mom gasped. Dad gripped the edge of the table. However, Ms. Sharma said, pausing for effect, Ms. Hayes is willing to forego immediate litigation and criminal complaints under specific conditions. She slid 2 new documents across the table. Option 2. You sign this quitclaim deed, transferring full and unencumbered title of this property to Olivia Hayes, effective immediately. You also sign this formal lease agreement. Lease agreement? Dad croaked. Yes, Ms. Sharma confirmed. You may continue residing in this house as tenants. Rent will be set at fair market value for this neighborhood, approximately $4,500 per month. Mom made another choked sound. However, Ms. Sharma added, in acknowledgement of the funds misappropriated via forgery, the first $157,800 of rent, roughly the first 35 months, will be considered waived, effectively serving as repayment of that specific debt. After that period, standard monthly rent payments commence. Refusal to sign the lease after transferring title will result in formal eviction proceedings. They stared at the papers, then at me, then back at the papers. Trapped. Utterly trapped. Avoid potential jail time and public ruin, but live as tenants in the house they stole, effectively paying me back every month? Or fight and likely lose everything? This is extortion, Dad finally blustered, though his voice lacked conviction. No, Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Sharma corrected calmly. This is consequences. Option 1 involves courts, potential criminal charges, and public record. Option 2 allows you to remain in the house, albeit under different terms, while making restitution for the fraudulent charges. The choice is yours. You have 24 hours to consult your counsel and provide your signed decision. She stood up, gathering her papers. I trust you'll make the prudent choice. We walked out, leaving them sitting in stunned silence at their marble island, the weight of their actions finally, irrevocably crashing down. They signed the papers the next day. That was 6 months ago. They still live there, in my house. They are, according to the legally binding lease agreement drafted by Ms. Sharma, my tenants. The first few months were tense, awkward, but the dynamic is clear. I am the owner. They are the occupants. Rent isn't due yet. They're still in the 35-month period of repaying the forged upgrades, but they know it's coming. Their dream of an early retirement in Arizona, funded by my savings, evaporated. They are polite now, almost deferential, when our paths cross during my brief visits, mostly to check on the property maintenance. I don't gloat. I don't remind them. I simply hold the title, manage the property taxes, which they now forward to me along with utility bills, and focus on my own life. I finally started my tech consultancy firm 2 months ago. It's small, demanding, but exhilarating. It's mine, built on savings I'm slowly rebuilding. Fueled by the knowledge that I faced down betrayal and didn't just survive, I prevailed, on my own terms. My parents taught me about family obligations, yes, but I learned a more valuable lesson myself: the importance of reading the fine print, documenting everything, and never underestimating the strength you find when you finally decide to stand up for yourself.